Hello MMA community, YouTubers, all you UFC fans who are trying to make a killing off of this weekend's the UFC card for UFC Fight Night 183, Thompson versus Neal. Some excellent matchups coming up for tomorrow night. We're going to have a lot of opportunities to make some excellent money. I'm very excited about so many of these fights. They're just not just as a fan perspective. I'm excited about watching the styles colliding and all the different variations and possibilities, but just some of the unknowns, like even for someone who knows usually what should happen all the time. It's kind of fun to go into, like, while I was doing my research. I don't think I can remember the last time I had this much fun and just a good time researching. So this is another reminder of how much I love what I do, man. And this is what makes anybody, as I'm sure you'll all agree, anybody who enjoys going to work or whatever it is they do, if you're doing something and you're having fun doing it, you're usually not only going to be better at it, but you're going to invest more of your time and energy and focus on it, as opposed to being distracted and just mentally checked out, you know? So I think I'm gonna have one of my best, most confident weeks. I'm most confident in this week, and I think I'm gonna have my best percentages. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to beat my percentages because most of the time I usually do get 100%, 90% range on average, but I just think, like, as far as the hows and like what should happen is just gonna be a perfect night for us. So let's get started, all right? And I have to remind you guys, I don't mean to be the bearer of bad news, but this is almost going to be like a girl who's just showing you some cleavage. She wants to, you know, like tease you a little bit and then just put her shirt back on and walk away, you know, just to be a not a nice girl. I don't want to use any bad words on this channel. They'll probably ban me for life. But after this segment, unfortunately, after this fight card tomorrow, I'm going to only be doing a selected few types of fights. By random, I'll be selecting fights for YouTube. The remainder of the breakdowns and predictions and picks will be going to strictly my patrons until further notice. So sorry about that. But let's get started with the by no order, okay? Let's just get started with one of them. I'm going to try to start with, just in case you guys are pressed for time, and this is going to be one of my longer videos because I'm going to try to put everything in. Since it's a Christmas weekend, I said I want to give you guys some free content so you guys can have the best Christmas possible for all your families. And I know these are the hardest times of the year, so it's my way of giving it paying forward. Let's start with one of the more controversial ones, one of the ones with the best paying odds. You get the best bang for your buck. Most people are I was looking at the consensus and the researches and all that stuff that people are expecting to happen in this fight. For the majority of the votes, the opinions, the professionals, even if you go down, I think I went through the professionals list, like all the main channels, the prediction specialists, everybody's going the wrong way in this direction, in my opinion. Again, this is just my opinion. What do I know, right, about this stuff? But in my opinion, Michel Pereira, okay, against the knockout artist Khaos Williams. Now, this is a guy who's built nice and strong for the division. He's very strong in a sense of one punch knockout power, but there are disadvantages for that type of a physique. The same reasons why some people can, like, say Yoel Romero's a boring fighter. As big and crazy and strong as he looks, he's got to be explosive only in intervals. He can't just continue that pace. He has that type of trouble as well. If you look back in his regional scene, any fight he's ever had that didn't get finished inside a minute of the first round, he struggles a lot in keeping consistent pace. He struggles a lot with his cardio. He struggles a lot with wrestling. His footwork is very sloppy. It looks like he's about to trip on himself. He's not very, and his opponent, Michel Pereira, is quite the opposite. This guy moves like a ninja. I mean, look at what he did at the weigh-ins. I've been saying the word ninja, and then he comes into the weigh-ins and does a ninja flip, roll, and like one of those somersault things. He looks like he is a ninja. He moves like one. If you've seen his training videos, the stuff he does in his training videos is straight ninja style stuff. And there's a reason. That means they're the opposite. Who's going to be the one moving around, cutting angles, getting the better cat-like reflexes out of the two, able to not to get hit while hitting as much? He's the better footwork. He's the better reflexes. He's not as powerful when it comes to one punch power, but when you have those defensive capabilities, it's like why I said that it was the worst nightmare matchup for Khaos, and he's going to be under, also keep in mind, he's going to be under so much pressure. And anytime somebody I told you guys this was going to happen with Justin James, because he had his father who was terminally ill on his corner in ringside. He was going to try to overperform to beyond his capabilities. Anytime somebody overextends themselves or tries to keep up with their gimmick, their newfound, because his stocks has gone from here to here, not doubled, not tripled, a million times. That means sponsors, outside the organization offers, deals, publicity. Like there's so many things that he's going from rags to riches overnight that he does not want to lose that. And that pressure of wanting to keep his reputation, his gimmick of being a one-punch knockout artist, a guy who's just so much better than he's ever been viewed as. Like, he's probably been viewed as a good fighter in his past. He wasn't a bad fighter, but never like this. And that pressure alone coming into his fight against a guy this dangerous, he's the better wrestler than Khaos. He's the better grappler. He's the way better black belt submission specialist, BJJ artist, better at defensive tactics in every area. And when you're limiting your ways of winning to just pretty much one compared to the other guy who, let me remind you guys, okay, his most recent loss was a disqualification fight against somebody he dominated 10-8 rounds. He looked like Kianzad did, but for 3 rounds. Like, Kianzad doesn't get touched by his opponents, but that's because he finishes them right away, right? He's shown the capability of being able to put away his opponents, but he knows that the world that we live in, if he just puts them away in 1 second, they'll forget about him tomorrow. They'll never talk about that fight again. If they do talk about it, they'll talk about how bad his opponent looked, more so. But if he can keep up this embarrassing, dominating performance for 3 full rounds or 5 rounds, people will start to see him as like, wow, this guy, he didn't win by fluke. He didn't win by some, coincidences. This guy is a complete package fight. He did submission stuff. He did ground stuff. He showcased his full, complete package skill sets. And that way, if you could dominate somebody entire round after round, he got into some bad luck. I said it's like lightning striking twice in the same place. It'll never happen again. So he lost on paper a fight that he was completely dominating and beating his opponent by not even close of a type of a level of like, it was just a big mismatch, man. It wasn't even closely, it wasn't a fight that you can even say it was somewhat close. The guy barely even, if he even landed a punch, it was like maybe 1. He hardly touched Michel for 3 rounds. That's way more impressive than getting a 1-round, 1-punch knockout, in my opinion, and I'm sure probably yours. But the other things I want to touch on, his other opponent, he did the same thing after that. And he started slapping for 2.5 rounds. He wanted to prove a point. He didn't like the guy. There was beef going into the fight because of the slap that he ended up doing. His opponent slapped him inside the face-offs right before the fight, so he had a point to prove. He wanted to humiliate this guy, just like Khabib said he wanted to do to Conor. He wasn't going to make him tap right away. So he embarrassed him for a few rounds, beat him up, and then made him tap in the later rounds. And that's what he said he would do, and he did it. Same thing. So I have people, for example, in my comment section saying he couldn't put him away and you're overhyping this guy. I've seen every single one of this guy's fights. You want to know how he lost? He's only got, for example, his other loss. He's lost to Conley. Conley's on like a 10 out of 10 fights. His last 10 fights, he's won 9. Out of those 9 fights that he's won out of his last 10, so he's pretty much almost like you could say on a 9-fight win streak, okay? The guy's a decision machine. He's a nonstop. He's a talent. He's got the full package, just like the only other. We'll talk about that in a second. But Conley, out of 13 of his 14 wins, he's got 14 wins under his belt. 13 of them by finish. He had a 100% finish rate. Do you know who messed up that finish rate? Who was the best guy out of all those 14 guys that you can say that lost to him by decision? The only time that Conley went to the decision scorecards and on any of his wins in his professional career record was to Michel Pereira. He hung with him for all 3 rounds. At least he lost way better than any of the other opponents. And then before that, the only time, and this is what is more important than that fight, because that guy's capabilities, Conley's capabilities, are not the same as, you cannot compare. They're just two different types of fighters, two different types of ways of winning. He does it. Conley's Khaos is not going to beat him by decision. It's not going to outpoint him, out cardios. It's not going to be the same. His level of output, all that is not going to be matched by him. He's got to be able to hurt him or knock him out. So that's the only way he's going to be able to win this fight. He's not going to outpace him or out-volume him. No way. Impossible. Anyways, or like submit him or out-grapple him or hold him down. It's just not his style. If you consider the style of fighting and the levels of who's better at this and who's better at that and who does this, the only path to victory that, according to what I've figured out for Khaos, is by either hurting him real bad and dominating him or taking him out, putting him away. That's it. So when you're limiting those things, and let me tell you, the only time that anybody's ever beat him inside the distance, remember, this is a guy who, I'm telling you, even with the guy who's got 100% finish rate, not 3 or 4 fights, 14 fights, 100% finish rate by mixtures between submissions and knockouts. He wasn't a one-trick pony. He could have finished, he finished his opponents in all different, he couldn't find any way to beat him besides decision. If that same problem comes to fruition with this guy, let me tell you, the only guy I was trying to finish saying, I'm sorry I got sidetracked, the only guy who was able to finish him some years back is a guy who we all know is not the same as a Khaos. Dusko Todorovic is a future champion type of material fighter. This guy's a future contender. He's going to be climbing up the ranks fast. And in that organization, this was before they both entered into the UFC, Dusko, remember I told you guys half the battle, half the fight is mental. You got to have the confidence, and if you go into a fight giving somebody too much respect, like how Uriah Hall respected Silva way too much, and in the first 2-3 rounds he was getting beat up by a guy who shouldn't even be still fighting anymore, but then as soon as he started to be forced by his trainers, were putting it in his head like, look, you're gonna lose, you need to do that, you need to do this, they finally gave him the courage to start to fight. The fight got finished in a matter of few strikes. It was over. Well, in that same thing that happens to a lot of fighters, happens to Dusko in this organization, that he was the only guy. He didn't finish him, by the way, by one punch knockout. He didn't put him to sleep. It was an accumulation of strikes. It wasn't the type of method that Khaos would have to have, because Dusko, all around fighting, as far as like takedowns and submissions and grappling and footwork, cardio, everything, he's just an all-around champion level material type of a fighter. This guy doesn't possess that. He's still undefeated till this day, that guy. So the only guy that's beat Michel Pereira with inside the distance, has only one first and only loss inside the distance, was to an undefeated future champion type of level fighter, who's now in the UFC as well, by the way, and has looked just awesome, man. You guys great. And back in the organ, like I was trying to tell you about the mental, Michel went into this fight. Mind you, this is a different Michel. Michel's a new, better version. This is a guy who every day, he's in the gym 7 days a week looking to ways. Every time we see Michel, he's going to be a better version than the last time. But this was years ago. So years ago, this Michel had to realize that Dusko's reputation, his credentials in that organization, he was seen as, imagine what Khabib is, or Silva. He was the Khabib or the Silvas of that organization. Remember, this is somebody who everybody knew was inevitable for him to land into the UFC one day. So they knew they're not fighting your typical, Joe Schmo inside of a hole in the wall type of organization. This is a future UFC talent. So he went into that fight understanding that he's not going to be, that's why you didn't see him showboating. He didn't have his hands down. He wasn't showing that bad IQ. You guys think that is considered bad IQ, but it's when he's got the confidence and he knows it's going to be a boring fight unless he tries to provoke his opponent to make it a memorable fight so he can earn a performance of the night bonus, or make it an exciting fight for the fans. Because remember, this is an MMA world where more important than rankings, like the Cody Garbrandt, who had never even had a fight, they pass up #1 ranked, the #2 guy, because of the following, because of the fans that they win over. This guy wants to do the same. He doesn't want to be obsoleted in a caveman. He's evolving with the way the world of MMA works now, so he's trying his best, and that's not bad IQ. If you ask me, that's the same stuff that keeps him sharp. He knows what he's doing. Don't consider it bad IQ. And I've done the same thing in my fights, and it's actually, you believe it or not, do you know how many, when I've tried that thing where, come on, go ahead and hit me, it's the same kind of kid, half the time they don't even hit you. It messes with them so it messes with their psyche so much, and mentally they start to feel like, what is this guy crazy? Is he that confident? Is he that good? Is he that fearless? That it's more better than being offensive. When you start going towards them with hands down, if you're capable of it, and don't be a Daniel Pineda who was bluffing, who didn't have the capabilities against the guy who was the way better. That doesn't work if you're that type of a guy. So it's selected type of a people can only do that, and Pierre is that guy. He could do that. All right, moving on. I'm only going to give you this. I'm not a psychic. I do this at your own risk. I'm only going to give you the smart plays. Like, there's some fighters, even I'll tell you right now on this card, one of the benefits of being on the Patreon, I look at, for example, the fight got scrapped, so we'll never see it. We won't know what happened. But where was it? Or actually, no, it didn't get scrapped. But we'll get to that. Here's another example. The Tafon fight. Look, there's a reason why. Like, he looks big. He looks swole. He's got the Yoel Romero complex. He looks like a giant, a world beater, a scary guy. But for that, and mind you, remember what I said about Sam Hughes? That she was not. The wind could have blown her over, and she was gonna want to tap out, and that you could just slap her that day, and she'll be finished. You'll be able to beat her. Why do you think she stopped in between? She didn't get off her stool. She said, no mas, I quit. She couldn't continue to the next. She knew she was going out there to get killed, because I told you it's going to take time. The same reason why Justin James was my fade and a lot of people were picking him. They don't pick this as a fighting thing. You got to recognize it. When you're transitioning to one organization to another, you got to, before you become accustomed to their protocols, their procedures, and you get to figure out how to work within their guidelines and be able to use the stuff that they do to be able to get what days to start cutting weight, what days to stop eating what you're supposed to eat, how long. Like, she wasn't used to that schedule. She's never done it before. That's a huge, those disadvantages alone have such impact on these fighters that you don't have to even think about the other problems that come with who they're facing. The opponent that they're facing is a whole set of other world of problems that they got to worry about. But in this case, just those alone, she was at a huge disadvantage. And I told you guys to fade her, and that you could put her opponent, Tisha Torres, was going to be one of my most confident picks. The same problem. The debut fight. This is Tafon's debut fight. You could see it in his eyes. He's got the same eyes. Remember, the window is your soul. They don't lie. He couldn't even give a good big flex. That wasn't his flex. He was very slow and droopy, and you could tell the weight cut. And this is a guy, remember, muscles weigh more than fat. He's on this weight class, and because muscle weighs more than fat, when he wants to burn fat, he's got to cut weight to get to, unlike his opponent, who's more of the cardio type of a body, who can cut weight, and that's why he was the first. His opponent was the first guy on the scales. Let me mention that too. He was the one guy on the scale for a reason. He looked better than ever. He was the more excited guy. He was the one that was making the faster, better movements and more happy. I've seen this all too many times. This is at a minus 300. Sure, he could win. Technically, he's got, on a fighting perspective, if you ignore all the circumstances that surround the fight from the outside of the, stuff on paper, minus 300 or 400 may not sound so bad. It still kind of sounds bad for a guy who's only got 4 professional wins on his record against the guy who's actually technically the more experienced, the more longer, taller, bigger size advantage, reach advantage, and less of a problem through your weight cut on a fight that's gonna on your debut on an opponent who's making his debut fight, who's not accustomed to the regiment that's gonna be able to make him less durable, have less cardio, be less capable of taking punishment, less effective when he's dishing out punishment. It's a world of difference, guys. And for minus 300, there's so many better fighters out there I can give you minus 100 money for. Less risky, more safer, and more money. These are the Patreon's benefits of being. They're not in there paying this small membership fee for nothing, guys. They know what they're doing. Anybody who hasn't joined and just wants to try to get lucky and take on these tips and incorporate it onto the betting, because remember, betting is another world of differences, and it's a whole different animal. You can know all the right people, who's gonna win, who's not, who should win, you can have the best MMA knowledge in the world, but if you're not a fighter, you never fought or trained, which is one of the things I've done. But I'm able to pick up on the things that most people can't, even fighters can't, because I've seen it happen to I'm not just one fighter. I'm coming from the perspective of 50. I've talked and trained and cornered millions of, not millions, you know what I mean, but I have the perspective and the experience of more than just the typical one fighter would. Anyways, so Tafon is somebody, remember, I'm not giving these things for anybody besides the patrons after, but this is the Christmas week when I'm in the spirit of giving, so you guys will benefit from it for the first time and last time, I would imagine. But back on track. So Tafon is not worth it at those odds, at those disadvantages. Anybody who wants this is not a parlay fight. There's too many variables and variations that you have to consider, and unknowns and red signs, red flags. This is not a parlay. This is the exact opinion. You know what's so funny? All the professionals, all the other channels and gurus and whatever, this is one of their most confident. Just like that week when Koski was everybody's first pick and everybody was, I don't want to put any names out there, but literally everybody said, I was the only guy that said, don't do it. And I gave you a list of reasons why. You can even go back to my Patreon and the dates don't lie. I said, don't put money on Koski. He was the biggest favorite. Everybody was most confident in. And I picked up on things that nobody saw. Sam Hughes, seeing I do this week after week after week. It's not a coincidence. It's not a fluke. Anyways, back on track. So Alex Morono, coming off of a war from Reese McGee, and he's like a Nate Diaz, who even if you're getting the better of the exchanges, you're beating him badly, he'll still keep coming forward and trying to punish you back and hope that you'll end up like he's gotten success from taking damage, giving damage, even though he's taking more damage than giving. He hopes that his heart, his ability to take on punishment will be higher than his opponent's capabilities, and that can win a fight, believe it or not. Not against Morono, it didn't, but it did put some damage on him, and that's not the type of damage you can come back from in 30 days. It's been 30 days or so, maybe less, give or take, and he's coming back against a seasoned vet. This guy's a former champion. He's not your normal type of competition. He's not a Reese. This guy will outclass you, He'll do. This guy beats Donald Cerrone at Donald Cerrone's own game. He put down Benson Henderson and you know, almost made it look like he was gonna put him in a coma with that way he fell down before he got back up. But it was just very, very big step up for him in this time frame. And this is something that Pettis does a lot. If you remember when Anderson Silva came back from his injuries, and he was the first guy calling Silva out. He's a cherry picker. He's an opportunist that likes to take advantage of opportunities to make himself look good. And I didn't like some of the stuff I seen in the interview. He wasn't focused on he wasn't talking much and the reason people do that is because they're not confident. They see that this is a bad fight in my system, this is what I would call a low to mid tier. Actually, after the interviews and what I've picked up on from Pettis as well, the physical and all that stuff is not as much concerning as the mental. His mental is not where I want it to be for a fighter. He's not in the right place, and that's why he was actually even talking about UFC recommending he sees a shrink. They had sent him, like, you know, if UFC is such a good company, they try to take care of their fighters as much as possible to keep them healthy and happy. If you go to them and say, I need some new teeth, like Anthony Smith, the next day they'll give you all brand new teeth. They'll send a doctor. The thing that they were focusing on the most with Anthony Pettis is they sent him a shrink, somebody to help him with his confidence. He was under depression, and the reason is because he's picking up on the fact that these are early signs of somebody who's headed towards retirement. He sees that he's going downhill, not uphill. He's not going to be a future champion again. He's not going to be climbing up the ranks, and that messes with his confidence. Confidence is a big part of the mental war. That's why they've given him a step down. But when you give a guy like Morono, who does have the potential, he's such a good wrestler. He never uses it for some reason, but when you give him a guy with a good name like that, a big name like that, who he knows can make it, he's not going to show up the same way. He'll show up 110%, not 90%, not 80%. So he may be coming in the best Morono that we've ever seen. So for these unknown variables and variations, not a good parlay piece. for -200-300, especially where Pettis is. He's prone to injuries. A lot of it to do is because he doesn't full-time train. Just like the same reason why James Cross, who's now focused on other things, and Pettis has a car wash, he's training his brother, he's got a lot of different outside of the UFC ventures that he's focused on. He doesn't need to fight anymore as much. That's why every time you hear his interviews, he's talking about the stuff he did in the past, almost as if he just wants to be remembered for his legacy and when he was in his prime, because he knows he doesn't have much to offer anymore. I pick up on these things, like when all you keep talking about is what you did back in your Bellator days, and you're not, he was still talking, it was the first thing he wanted to talk about in his interview. Bad signs. I don't like it. The doctors that they were sending him, that he didn't he didn't realize he was talking about more than he should have. Anytime I picked up on these things, so I don't like it. If it wasn't for Reese coming back from such a big war, back and forth bloodbath war, I would probably even sprinkle some money on him as an underdog, as a single bet, maybe. But, and remember, again, Pettis is a guy who, even when he's losing fights, will find a way. His winning heart, desire to champion mentality he has, that made him a champion back in the day, it could get him to win fights just off that merit alone. That's why the Cerrone fight, he literally had one more significant strike than Cerrone. He knew what he needed to do, just enough to scave away with a win. And knowing Cerrone's at the end of his career, the decisions, he didn't have to do much to get that nudge. And also, like with the Stephen Thompson fight, he was losing by so much that it got to a point where he knew he'd better stop being technical and just headhunt against the guy who's not capable at this age of in this stage of his career to be able to withstand those types of. He got him into the perfect play. He knew that he doesn't have to keep winning the fight. He just got to find a moment where he can win the fight, and that's the same thing that Thompson's going to be facing in Neal. But now he's got 5 rounds to do it. And Geoff Neal is the type of a fighter. He could. Sorry, I'm trying to get through as many things. So now let's focus on. You heard about that. Now let's focus on Geoff Neal. He's not the greatest at anything. I'll tell you this, like but he's good at everything. He could hang with the best of them on the feet. He can hang with the best of them on the ground. He can do it in the grapple. He could do it in the clinch. He can hold you against the face. He's got power. He's got the stocky. He had a great weight cut. He didn't have any problems. He looks in the best shape of his life. He's got the heart. He knows this is a main event. This is one of his first main events coming, so he's going to be showing at 110%. This is a name bigger than any he's ever had. He's like the way I was explaining Morono should show up, but he's not coming from a fight that was really bad and back and forth only 30 days ago. This is a guy who's been prepared, who knows how important this is, who's got good IQ. One of the things I love about how he fights is even when he's losing, he doesn't even need his trainers or anybody. He's got the IQ to know that he needs to make, unlike Vicente Luque, who just kept fighting the same fight over and over until he lost in the decisions, he will change it up. He will, in the middle of a fight, turn into a different fighter, turn into a different style. He'll make adjustments that are needed to start giving himself a chance to not allow his opponent to continue to have success where he's been showing. So that mentality is championship level, and that's why he's on the main event against the guy who was former championship level. He's one of those guys that should, like the Yoel Romero's, who's had so many opportunities. He's had 2 fights with Woodley, and like this is a guy who could have been and should have been one of the best fighters that didn't hold a belt, you know. So and in his old organizations, you know what type of a reputation Stephen Thompson had? And that's another thing that he's lost too. He's another, in a sense, Anthony Pettis. He knows he's not the Stephen Thompson of old. So you're going to see, as soon as that mentality thing alone, that thing that's gotten into his head, which is the reason why we don't see Stephen Thompson as active as we used to. He's not accepting fights with Kianzad, and he's not calling people out, and he's focusing on helping Chris Weidman training and other things outside of that. He's doing like podcast stuff, and those are reasons because he knows he's on the downhill now. So that's why I said only good degenerate gamblers or unknowledgeable people would put their money on him. He knows as soon as this Stephen Thompson, who's incapable of having the same reflexes and abilities to move out of the way of danger, but here's the bigger problem. How I predicted Jordan Wright and Malcolm Gordon, to as soon as they see some type of a threat, and they start to feel some powers, shots landing, and they start to feel in any type of danger, their lack of confidence in themselves, they're them being realists and who have who've come to terms with the fact that they're not the old self anymore, will end up balling up and covering up and getting finished. And that's how he lost against Pettis, and that was a while back. Now he's not going to be better. He's only getting father time. I told you, it's the one thing you will never beat, and it'll keep catching up and beating you worse and worse until you come to the Junior Dos Santos. I told you what was going to happen. Even during the fight in my live companion, I was saying, look, because he looked like he was having success, I said this is going to be the reason he loses. If he doesn't stop this approach, he doesn't stop this offense, and I said it before the fights, he's the last person that realizes it, that he's not going to be able to, he's not as durable and be able to do that. Your offense has to change. And now perfect transition. Now let's talk about Aldo. Aldo, we're eventually going to see Aldo like how we're seeing Glover Teixeira, or who's the other fight I wanted to talk about. There's some times where, even on Arlovsky, but there was somebody else, they start to realize like they've got to compensate for the areas that they're not as good as they used to be in. And Aldo's not there yet, don't get me wrong. He's still in his prime, believe it or not. At 34, and when you add on the level of experience, the ring generalship, the IQ, the confidence, and just all that stuff that he didn't have before, some can argue he's the better version of his old self, but power is the last thing that goes. So when he does, that's why Glover, he's transitioned. He's not the same guy that was trying to stay on the feet and fight with Rumble Jackson and got knocked out in the first round. This is a different eye. This is a guy who's immediately going for the chain wrestling approach, the Khabib mentality. So he's made adjustments. He's not in denial. He's not doing what Junior Dos Santos was doing, what the Jacare Souzas were doing, who we predicted to lose how they lost, and we cashed in on their opponents. That a lot of people, because Holland was a underdog, and a lot of people chose Jacare because of his size. He came down, he's the bigger, more skilled. As soon as the other guy's bad takedown defense is gonna, I've told you guys how many times that people can win off their backs. I even told you that in the Dana White Contender Series, the guy who was undefeated as a favorite was gonna lose to somebody who wins fights from his back. He spent 80% of the fight on his back and still won. That guy underdog that I gave you guys in Dana White, if you look back on my videos, we predicted he won just like that. I told you guys that Souza was not going to win it. He was one of my fades almost. It was no chance. Holland was one of my most confident picks for a reason. People were picking Souza to win that fight, but father time catches, and they're not making adjustments. When we see this version of Aldo, the version that's making adjustments, who knows that now he's got to start doing stuff like, for example, if he could make some slight adjustments in his game plan, if he doesn't fight the same exact way the old Aldo fought, and he just started focusing on only the things that he was better at now and having his advantages at now, this guy could dominate his opponents very impressively. Okay, let's think of this. Okay, if we gave Chito Vera all of Jose Aldo's most recent opponents, the ones he's lost to especially, if we switched it around and gave Jose Aldo all of Chito Vera's opponents and Chito Vera all of Aldo's opponents, and let's run it back, let's reverse time, and let's fast forward, who do you think would be on the -2, -3 losing streak? Who would be the one with the momentum? The guys that Chito has beat, they wouldn't even think about matching them up with Aldo. It would be a joke. It would be a mismatch of all mismatches. So to give him the credit and the respect of being a pick'em and this is a guy who came as a +500 underdog to a guy not even closely as accomplished or experienced or as good as Jose Aldo, who's a future legend Hall of Famer. So the odds, the value, this screams value. Aldo is one of the best values on this card. Win, lose, or draw, he's the smarter bet, smarter play. He's the, not even just in speaking of values-wise and everything else and comparing how they looked and the level of opponents and competition and just, He needs this fight. He's going to be the more motivated than we've ever seen him before. And if he just shows up as the Aldo that we've seen lose against Peter Yan, who was having a lot of success in the earlier rounds. Mind you, that was a championship fight. They put him in a championship position for a reason, by the way, not because he's in his end of his career. They gave him that opportunity. These guys are smart. They're almost on my level of expertise, but not yet. Anyway, so we're going to go back on track. And I have a t-shirt coming back. Somebody had made in the comment section saying that we got to put a back on track t-shirt for you guys. So I'm coming out with a limited edition version of that t-shirt for you guys, because we say it so many times here. Anyways, so back on track. We're going to go and try to determine like the level, like let's think about let's dissect this fight. What would Chito Vera have to do to beat Aldo? Now ask yourself, is he even better at doing that than Aldo? Absolutely not. I'll tell you that. Don't ask yourself. It was a rhetorical question. I'll tell you now. Leg kicks, how he won his last fight, which was that was his go-to plan. His first go-to plan, plan A, before B and C, if it failed. That plan A, if he tries to implement that plan, he's losing that battle every day of the week, twice on Sunday. He's not going to beat Aldo at that. Aldo is a guy with that same strategy against a way more credentialed fighter, Uriah Faber. This guy is a legend of the sport. This guy is the best of the best. Sorry guys, 1 second. I gotta make something happen real quick for us here. Anyways, so you're right. Go back if you haven't seen this fight, please, so you can understand where I'm coming from. Go back to the Uriah Faber, who's, by the way, like the best of the best, future Hall of Famer, former champion, one of the best fighters to ever live. And this guy, after the fight, after the battle with Jose Aldo, who, mind you, was giving him a leg kick and lifting him in the air off the ground, sweeping him out. Nobody's ever done that to the bigger, stronger Uriah Faber at the time, especially in his prime, when he was in his prime. The guy ended the fight. This guy was on crutches. He was swollen. He was never the same after that fight for a long time. It took him a while to get back to his normal. You're going to compare that to a Vera? Who does, besides a fragile Sean O'Malley, who's never been proven against a higher level, the first step up into competition, a guy who wasn't a has-been or never was, the first time, and he did it to himself. He put his foot in, he called Vera out. He didn't even, the UFC didn't want to give him that. He was on a hype train. He was making him great money. And then he derailed himself by, sometimes people, I guess, they drink their own Kool-Aid. What is that for expression? Where, they think they're better than, they start to believe into their own hype. I think this was a perfect example of that. This guy he called out a guy who was having a lot of money on the level of where they are at. Vera's a world beater. He's the best of the worst, I guess, but not this level. He hasn't gotten there yet. And in my opinion, I just don't think we'll ever see him there. I think once he starts to get to the Jimmy Riveras, the Peter Yans, the Sanhagens, the Aljos, the Sterling, and the Aldos, I don't think he'll do and have as much success. He has success against guys with no heart. Like, look at his wins. Look who's won against, but then look how he's beating them. He's not doing some crazy, like, impressive, like, special stuff. It's just basic stuff, just against guys who don't want to be there, who aren't used to having that level of adversity. And they are used to having guys who they're matched up at their level, which is the lower level even. So there's levels to it, but it just, take my word on it. I don't want to spend too much more time on it. The smarter win, lose, or draw play, if we're talking from a betting, remember, I'm going to give you the MMA hardcore fans opinion, then I'm going to give you the betting experts opinion. And when they both come together and come up with the same exact conclusion, especially, it's beautiful, man. That's when you're smart in every aspect, and nobody can tell you that no matter what happened, you picked the wrong way. Because I'm also going to put into the politics, like, is the marketing machine behind one guy or the other? Or do they want to give it to him in the decision cards if it's a close? I take everything into consideration, guys. So, but this is not a fight that there's anybody who, they know that Chito's not going to be they know when they look at the top three, the future contenders, the young, he's not going to be a champion. They don't need to keep pushing. He's already at the level of his peak almost. And there's only one way to go from here. It's down. So they're not going to try to keep him at where he is and screw over a legend Hall of Famer. They're not going to rob Aldo at the decision cards. Aldo happens to get the better end of the decisions if you ask me on this fight. So another reason you want to stick with the Aldo on this fight. It's only a 3-rounder, keep in mind, not a 5-rounder. The Aldo of 3 rounds is not the same Aldo as 5 rounds. This is a way more dangerous and better style fight for him. In 3 rounds, all day long, I got Aldo in this fight. Anybody who doesn't, best of luck to you anyways. Alright, oh man, what fight are we on? Gillian, I'll just go with random order. Gillian Robertson has... See, she's one of my most favorite styles of fighting. Like, when it comes to styles of fighting in MMA, she doesn't leave it to the decision. She doesn't give it a chance to... She's a great parlay piece. You know why? Because she doesn't go... 99% of her victories, every single one of her victories, besides the one that she completely dominated and knew that she didn't need to submit them, she's only got 1 win under her 14, 15 wins, that whatever it is, 10 wins. The only 1 win that she didn't finish her opponent on, she almost finished him, by the way. It was very close to being finished a few times, but she showed maturity. She showed that she's developed, she's confident, she knows she doesn't need to finish them, and she'll still be able to win the fight. She's making improvements in the areas that she had weaknesses on. So that reason, this is a fight that it's going to be a little bit difficult for her because she's just finally made the improvements that we want to see from her, but she hasn't been able to sharpen them. It's like she's got a good knife, but it still needs to be sharpened a little bit, and they're giving her a person with a sharper knife somewhat, but not enough of a strong enough ground game. So like in the area of her weakness where she has the disadvantage, it's very close in between her and the other opponent, right? But the area where she has the advantages on, she's levels, like years of levels of more skilled and dangerous and capable of finishing and winning the fight than her opponent Santos. So once it gets to that world, she has 3 rounds to get it there, and it only has to be there for 30 seconds. This is a certified, legitimate, high-level, not like a Eubanks who's technically still a black belt, but never had a submission in her life and is not a threat besides control time and nullifying her opponent's threats, is no good on the ground. This is an actual threat. She'll take your arm off, break your shoulder, snap your neck, and finish the fights. This is a real black belt threat. So she's got way more paths to victory. She's falling in love with her hands now. I like to see that she's showing her confidence even on the feet. She's not getting desperate for the takedowns. And that transition, when you're not afraid of being on the feet, it's the same concept of not being afraid of being taken down. You're not nullifying your opponent is not nullifying your threat on the feet or the ground. So that's what she's got the advantage of. Like, imagine if Conor McGregor was not afraid of being taken to the ground by Khabib, or Justin Gaethje wasn't afraid of being taken down by him, or if Korean Zombie wasn't afraid of being taken down by Brian Ortega. You think that fight would have gone the same way? Absolutely not. So that's what we can expect. I slightly, especially when you're talking about the value side, it's Gillian Robertson here. She's the momentum's on her side. She's not the type that will have to worry you about the decisions. The Chris Lee's on the panel for robbing us blind so many times. Chris Lee by himself, you know how many thousands of dollars that guy's cost me this year? I've come prepared, guys. Don't worry. Besides those adjustments, there's a million other things that I've tweaked. Our system is better than ever. It's flawless, near perfect. I don't even think I can make any more adjustments. These are going to be, the new year is coming up. Oh man, we're going to be millionaires if we even just invest small amounts each week. So don't worry, it's going to be with all the accuracy that we come with on top of the other things that we come with. It's going to be an awesome year for us, and we're going to finish it off strong. This is going to be one of our best weekends. It's not too late. Make sure you join the Patreon. We have different levels that help you keep climbing if in case you have to start small. So hit that up. It's in the description. Please also hit the like, the subscribe, the reminders, so I keep coming back for at least the free content, if nothing else, for you guys. Anyways, and leave me some comments. Comments are very important. It's like you're helping me get seen by YouTube. Will push my content out if you put in comments in the comment section. Just anything, hello, how are you, that types of stuff. I would very much appreciate it, guys. it'd be a nice way to pay me back for my time. All right, anyways. And remember, I do this for like the kindness of my heart, man. I do have a good job. I'll talk to you guys more. We'll get to know each other more little by little. This is still new to me. I'll explain to you guys what kind of a job that I have. It's a real good job, actually. Pays very, very well. Anyways, back on track. Sorry about the distraction and the sidetrack. Oh, back. I don't even know myself saying it anymore, guys. So yeah, it's definitely got. It's got to come out with a limited edition T-shirt now. All right, so what fight are we gonna go into now? Let's think. I gotta go into my system reset. Yeah. So we talked about the Tafon. We talked about the Aldo, Pereira. All right. Now Rob Font. Remember what I've said about him in the previous videos? He's not taking his career as serious. He's focusing on helping other fighters with their careers, like Qatar's, and with his Qatar and the Holloway fight, he's more invested and interested and motivated by that fight than his own. And he's also showing signs because his last 2 fights were exactly just before Christmas time. I don't think it's a coincidence at the most expensive time of the year. And once a year, fighting is just who cares what time it is, besides the fact that and he's now becoming more prone to injuries, which is another sign. He's also, what was the other signs that I picked? He was the last guy to the scales, literally the last guy. All those other signs that we were worried about, then to be the guy who just barely made the weight and had to be the last guy on the scales tells me that you're not taking your career serious. You're not the Jamie Pickett who was excited and eager to get on there and show that he was ready to go. That stuff says a lot, and it speaks in volume. So besides that, he's facing an opponent that's just in his style, in the world, in the path to victory, that Font has to get this in his advantage. It's a nightmare for him. And I know a lot of people are going to say the cardio, the this, the that. The fluke that happened, like, look, there was an early stoppage, just forget, but the opponent that he's coming off of, it's a similar sense to what we were saying about Aldo. This guy's only lost to champions, former champions, or future champions. This is not the same thing, okay? Rob Font's the day that Rob Font becomes a champion is going to be the day pigs are flying and I stop saying back on track. It'll never happen. So back on track. Rob Font has nowhere near the abilities on the feet. He's not the more accurate striker. He's not the more fluid. He's not the more dangerous. He's not the more powerful. He's just the way lesser credential striker. This guy's a true black belt expert in his style. And defensively, offensively, he's got the advantage. He's going to take him apart. And if he does decide to want to even make it more of a mismatch and try to take him to the ground or just out muscle him, hold him against the cage and make it if he just wants to make it a boring fight, he could very much do that. And that's his problem. He doesn't like to make boring fights, but in this case, the level stepped down from where he's used to been fighting at recently. I could see and the guy who's not as durable as he used to be. He's not the same of the old, like kind of how I predicted the Moicano fight was going to be. And a lot of people were overrating, and they're still considering him to be the same guy he was in his beginning career when he was climbing up in the rankings and making a name for himself. I told you that his opponent was first of all, worst nightmare matchup, and we saw that coming. I see the same reasons on this fight for him to just be the perfect style matchup for the matchmakers. Want everybody to be reminded of what type of a level, threat, and fighter that Marlon Moraes is. Marlon Moraes is on a different level than this guy. Always has been, even when he was in his prime, more durable, more active. Moraes would win this fight 9 out of 10 times. But during these circumstances that surrounding this fight now, with everything that I've picked up on in my researches, this is a no-brainer. Moraes is going to win this fight, no doubt about it. And he's not going to need to do the stuff that he was doing. He's not going to have to keep up a pace that he's used to having to do, because look, when he was fighting the Cejudos, he knew he had to be on full throttle, 110%, and get a finish, or else the longer the fight went, the more of a disadvantage he'd be at. And the more he's in danger. And against a guy like this, he could just keep his foot off the gas, on the gas, off the gas, and just comfortably skate by even a decision win. He doesn't have to finish him to win by a decision. Is a guarantee. No matter how it goes, he's going to win this fight. Could be by decision. He's not going to burn himself out. He doesn't have to go for broke. He doesn't have to be at 110% or overperform beyond his capabilities of being able to handle and withstand his physique that comes with the cardio issues that he has, because his cardio issues is not because he's lazy, doesn't exercise. No, it's just his physique comes with those types of problems. That's why Yoel Romero doesn't explode, or he only explodes in intervals. So, but this guy tries to be fun and tries to put it, he doesn't do that. He tries to forward nonstop, constant pressure, but at full speed, at full 110%. He doesn't jab. If this guy just uses a jab and some leg kicks and then gives like 10% of the round his most dangerous, hardest strikes, easy decision win. And I don't think he's going to have bad IQ on a fight that he knows he's got to redeem himself from his most previous loss. He's going to be at his most smartest, best game plan and physical. So don't worry, I just don't see any way possible that he'll lose this fight. So that's one of my most confident picks for a reason. Sijara, all right, let's just go to Sijara, Eubanks, and Pannie Kianzad. Now, see, this should be, I don't know what I'm gonna start looking at the odds. I mean, I would really love to see the odds on some of these things. I don't even know who's the favorite on any of these fights, to be quite frank with you guys. So you guys should be looking at the odds. And this is a fight that, unless you're a degenerate gambler or you're feeling lucky, you should not be betting on, because both of these people have a path to victory. It could be, unless you're like that guy in that Mel Gibson in that movie, What Women Want, where you could hear the thoughts of every woman passing by him. Unless you've got those abilities and you know what game plan they're going to utilize, how motivated they are, who's going to be the one that's going to implement it first and better, there's no way to tell who's going to win this fight. Because one person has an advantage at one place, the other person has the advantage in the other place. How good, and like Kianzad has got some of the best takedown defense in that class, in my opinion. She's underrated in that aspect. Let's see if we look into that aspect only. Kianzad, if she can keep this from going to the ground, but here's the problem, it's not just skills. When it comes to this, it's power. Did you see how, for example, Vera, and I told you I picked up on it in the weigh-ins, the face-offs, when I saw he tried to bluff by doing that. It went from face to face to he moved back and tried to pretend like he was doing a ninja stance he never did before, is because he wanted to make it look like he was smaller for a reason, because he was hunched over. It wasn't. I picked it up right away. He only hunched over and did that ninja thing because he felt smaller, weaker, and less confident. I read that all over it, and I knew it was going to. I was almost 99% sure Ferguson was going to lose because of just that weigh-in face-off moment. So that's why we've made changes that we don't make any of our bets until after. So the bet slips are coming out right after this video, guys. Stay tuned. I read a lot of signs and signals that would have changed a lot of things. So I'm glad we waited this time around. And I hope you guys can reap the benefits the same way I do. And if you see my Twitter account, I have some bet slips for $100, paying $3,000, $2,000, I have 3,300 plus 3,300 odds, 2,700 odds, 1,500s, 89 to 1 odds cash in 3 times in one day. Systematically, they think it's a risky parlay or risky bet, submission prop or whatever. The stuff that they knew, if they knew half the things that I know, man, they would never have given those odds to me. So we're going to have one of those types of weeks this week. Don't worry. Your membership will be paid back in hundreds fold. Back on track. You guys are probably saying it before I do at this point. Like, you already see it coming, right? Oh, yeah. So if Gillian Robertson, Sijara Eubanks implements her plan first and longer, if she gets on top of her, it's a game over. It's the same way Avila's the way better fighter, right? She's the way more credentialed striker. She's just all around. She came in as a big favorite, but it got to a point of her strength alone, the physicality, and I got to be honest, I think she's realized it, because this is the strongest, biggest, healthiest I've seen Eubanks ever look. So there's no way. I wanted to maybe consider putting some money on Kianzad, her opponent, but after seeing her at the face-off weigh-in scales, I may even, if I had to, I may flip it to the other side. But this is just a fight that screams stay away from it. Stay away from it. Women's MMA, two different people who are inconsistent, not the greatest IQ. And I like to put money on IQ more than anything else. I bank on somebody, if they have good IQ, like Daniel Pineda had the perfect opportunity to win the fight against, but then started showing bad IQ, putting his hands down, not going back to the leg kicks. The guy was spinning around in circles every time he landed a kick, and decided I'd rather not do that instead. And instead of finishing the fight that way, let me go try success in an area where I'm at a disadvantage, and then do it away with my hands, not even being able to protect against the punch. I just don't get it. Maybe he thought he was invincible, it was going to go through him. I don't know. So bad IQ, there's a list I'm going to start putting in. These are fades. If you have bad IQ, you're not consistent, we cannot depend on you. And these are two similar types of fighters. They got heart, which can translate to bad IQ, and sometimes they're too proud. So for so many reasons, this is a fight you don't want to put money on it unless you're a degenerate gambler. There's too many, there's 14, 13 fights on this card. There's no need for that. All right, guys, moving on. Jimmy Flick, Cody Durden. I feel like I've broken this fight down 17 times already. So he came in looking great, confident. If there's anybody who maybe sensed a little bit of nervousness from Cody Durden, you got to get to know. So I try to get to know their personality. He's a very nice guy. Cody Durden is one of the nicest, sweetest people in the world. So, but he knows that in MMA right now, the world, like the Kianzads who are building their reputation from being mean and bullies and, like, you know, very aggressive. He's trying, and the Conor McGregors who are getting the most attention following, he knows that that's the approach he's got to take. So he tried a little bit of that, and it was unnatural for him. So it didn't look good and right, but that has nothing to do with how he's going to fight. He's going to be the stronger, he's going to be the more technical, better striker, and he can bully Flick. And if he can avoid the takedowns, which he's pretty good at, he's an excellent grappler. He's the better wrestling and grappler. So the more paths to victory, the more physical advantages are all in the side. I mean, in the side in favor of Durden. Smarter bet, win, loser, draw. And according to my studies, the one that's going to have the more statistics out of 8 out of 10 times when he doesn't get caught in that crazy submission attempt that Flick has the chance to land, he'll always win that fight. He's got the best cardio, the best durability, the best heart, maybe in the entire UFC. His cardio is off the charts. His ability to withstand, like, he was taking Chris Gutierrez. They even have a mutual opponent. They've both fought a Chris Gutierrez who's a beast on leg kicks and everything. This guy was eating his leg kicks for breakfast and asking for more. He was still going forward, constant, non-stop pressure against a striker like that, and he went to draw. He even had a 10-8 round against him, dominating him in an area where he'll need to be good at if he wants to have success and be able to defend himself from the threats that Flick has. So for Flick, this couldn't have been a worse nightmare matchup. And him being with all that hype, and this is being his debut fight, he's got some other obstacles he's got to deal with outside of the opponent's threats, like I've mentioned with so many other people. But him being a smaller guy, he may not have as many threats. But just in my opinion, just for so many reasons, this is a fight that you should either stay away from. If you don't like Durden, don't bet on Flick. This is a fight that could very much be a parlay winner or a big upset, because Durden should not be an underdog. You should be the slight favorite in this fight. If they're not counting somebody who's a one-trick pony, who's not durable, Flick has got knocked out He's a similar sense to like a Malcolm Gordon. He does not respond good to getting hit. As soon as you show him that you're getting, there's a reason why he lost so badly to Chris Gutierrez, and this guy almost beat him and ended up going to a draw. Mind you, Chris Gutierrez is on a tear. The only guy who's ever beat Chris Gutierrez, from my recollection, is Barcelos. Remember the guy who just beat the Lebanese guy who's looking like that guy's the dark horse of the division. He's a featured champ. I think he's going to fight Moraes. I don't know who's. They had something in the works for him, so we'll talk about him again in the future. One of my favorite, best fighters of that division. It's the only guy who beat Chris Gutierrez, and you know he always holds a good account of himself. So Durden is not a guy who you ever want to count out. His heart and desire to want to win is the same type of heart and desire that Vettori showed in the Hermanson fight. You never count those guys out. So it's a smart bet to either go with him or pass if you're not wanting to go with him. My opinion, so take it for what it's worth. All right, guys, we're back. No, I'm just kidding. Next fight is the Carlton minus Christos Giagos. Christos Giagos is a guy who's got much more better level of competition under his belt. He's shown a good account of himself, even in the fights that he's lost. A good example is the Josh Emmett fight. He was dominating and winning against the UFC veteran guy who's a knockout artist, who's got sick power, and he avoided the dangers and the threats until he got fatigued all the way towards the end of the fight, where he came very close to winning. He ends up getting caught by Josh Emmett. This guy's no Josh Emmett. He's nowhere near that level. Carlton minus, although he's looking better because he understands after his last performance against the guy who was a big underdog, who pulled an upset that I saw coming from a mile away. I don't remember ever putting as much money confidently on an underdog as I did against minus that day, Helmsberger, on his debut fight. Never even fought in the UFC before, coming off a low organization with a bad record. I still knew that he was going to beat minus. But minus, even though he's looking to have made some improvements physically, he's got some advantages. The heart, the skill, the technicality, the overall advantages that his opponent's going to have, even on a short notice. I'm going to have to lean on Chris. They call him, it's funny, he went from fighting a guy who's nicknamed, Glenn was nicknamed the Gladiator. Now he's fighting a guy nicknamed the Spartan. So they're trying to get this guy opponents who are going to look impressive. So they're trying. This is a perfect example of like when they like somebody, when they want to see them doing well, or they just like him. Even if they don't want to see him doing well, they just like somebody. They give them opponents like this, and I think they do like the Spartan. He's a guy that has anybody. He's just. Remember I told you on every card where they have cards, like when the marketing machine has an agenda and they want to promote somebody, so they'll give like Holland, the Trailblazer, a guy like Souza to build his name. They know it's a mismatch. They know that he's going to dominate and win and probably take the guy's head off. So they got to make up for it by giving you guys a fight that's going to be fun to watch and somebody who's going to perform and give you an entertaining fight. And those are usually the curtain jerkers. Like there's a reason why this is the first fight of the night. They want you to have an exciting. They want it. It's like the attention grabber when you're telling a story. In order to be, if you don't want somebody to turn the channel or go flip to another book, the first paragraph or the first segment of the first few minutes of the segment's got to be the best. They want somebody to they're taking their worst guy, the easiest guy to punish and embarrass, and they're giving him somebody who can fulfill the shoes of what Joaquin Buckley did to Jordan Wright when they fed him Jordan Wright, or so many other examples I can give you. No time for that, but they're putting Christos Giagos, the Spartan, in a position to take out Carlton minus, and he'll probably do it in the later rounds, I would imagine, but it's possible to even finish him early on. So don't bet the props on this. These are not dependable guys. They're not high caliber fighters. So this is not a fight that you want to go into the prop bets on. Just taking the straight money line. Don't invest too much. You wouldn't be somebody you would put in too many parlays. There's a lower mid-level tier type of a parlay piece. But again, if you're in my Patreon, you just sit back, look pretty, cash in the tickets. All you got to do is duplicate what I do, and don't have to worry about the who's, the how's, the why's, the when's, how many times, how much money. I take care of all that for you. I do all the research, the heavy lifting. You just sit back, look pretty, so you can retire young and sexy and early in your life. All right, guys. So I think we're pretty much done with this card. Oh yeah, Marcin. The rest of them I've broken out. You can go to my previous videos. There's timestamps which will be done for this video as well to help you guys. Marcin Tybura, Greg Hardy, the better fighter, almost equally as good of an athlete. So usually Greg Hardy has an advantage by being the better athlete and capable of having the better fluidity, the movement, or just physicalness. Physicality will be at a big advantage. In this case, the Polish Tybura is not a slouch. He's showing to Mac, he doesn't move like a big guy. If you've seen him, you wouldn't think he's a fighter, but he moves way better. He's going to be the better wrestler. He's the better ground. He's got so many more paths to victory in this fight. He's got so many more advantages in this fight that anybody betting against him is a gambling man who likes to take chances. The chance, if Rothwell couldn't do it, and I know in the past he has had opponents that were capable of doing, but those are skilled opponents. Those are guys on a million times of a higher level than where Greg Hardy is as far as skill and technicality. It's just not even close. The guy who just lost to Overeem, forgot his name. Sakurai, something like that. But he's just he's Greg Hardy in 20 years from now. If Greg Hardy was, if you see him on a Dana White Contender Series, this guy was on a rampage. He was looking great until he fought somebody who was similar to him, but the more experienced. Perfect example, actually. I'm glad we brought that fight up. Look at the Sakurai fight versus Overeem. Overeem was older. He was not as durable. He came off of a loss against Joe Rosenstrike where he got he got hurt real bad, right? Everything you guys said about Aldo versus Vera, same thing applied to that, right? What happened in that fight, guys? We knew all through Overeem. If you look at my tickets, we knew what was going to happen. The experience, the level of, he just knew he was the better man that day. He dominated him, put him away. Now, although the different type of a style fighter, he's more likely to probably win by decision, especially because Cheeto's very strong, durable, got heart. So this is a fight that I got so many good props, guys. Wait till my props come out. I got some props I'm going to circle and put stars next to them, telling you guys if you're in my Patreon, which I'm more confident. I'm going to also do the same thing for my combinations, for my parlays, to tell you which ones are the safest ones, so you can put the more money on them. And then I'll also give you ones that are very high likely to cash in, but just because of the small risks, I'll tell you to put the lesser money on them, but they pay at such good odds that you may even make more money than the safer ones. So don't worry, it'll even out. The system is flawless between the ratio between the money you're putting into it and versus the risks. It's perfectly balanced. You guys are gonna love it if you only really understood the science behind it and the trial and error that I had to go into before mastering it. You guys would really appreciate it. So I hope you guys, I see you on the club. We're growing stronger. I have members in there who also help me with research. They start to catch on to things sometimes I may miss, or they get it before I can get it, and we put our heads together. So you also reap from the benefit of having not just one sharp MMA mind, but hundreds of them. So the more of us in there, the stronger, better, safer we are, the more success we have. So I hope to see you guys joining in there. And any questions or anything, there's an open line of communication. Me and you can talk about it and figure it out together, guys. Thank you so much. God bless. Have a happy holidays. And I'm going to do a live companion tomorrow. I may end up doing it with a collaboration on another channel that's invited me onto their channel to fill in for DFS Brady, who won't be there, I believe. So they invited me on to take his spot with them on their channel. So I may put a link in for their channel. If not, we'll do it on my channel for sure. So don't worry about it, guys. We'll make some extra live betting opportunity moments where I'll be able to capitalize on plus money line movement and that type of stuff. We'll make even more money on that. So great to have you guys if you can join us. Thank you, guys. See you on the next video.